Day for Thursday, Vav Tishrei Tavshin Pei Aleph, 15th and final Perek of Hilchos Tefillah and Birkas Kohanim. Yesterday we learned generally about the mitzvah of Birkas Kohanim and how we fulfill, how we perform Birkas Kohanim. And now in the final Perek we're going to learn a number of additional details and conditions relating to doing Birkas Kohanim, as we shall see right away. In the first part of the Perek, the Rambam does what he occasionally does, which is he sort of introduces the topics he's going to discuss and then goes through them systematically one by one. So it takes away that I don't have to introduce anything myself. Halacha Aleph. Shisha Devarim Meinin Nesias Kapayim. There are 6 things that inhibit, that would prohibit you from going ahead with doing Birkas Kohanim, and they are Haloshin, which we'll see as pronunciation, V'hamumin, defects, disfiguration, V'avera, particular transgressions, as we shall see, V'ashanim, age, V'yayin, alcohol, specifically wine, V'tumas hayadayim, and not washing one's hands. And we're going to start going through it right away. So number 1, Haloshin, Ketzad. What do you mean by Loshin? So Rambam says the Ilgim, those who can't speak properly, Sheim Mitzinas Oisius Ketikna, they're not enunciating the letters properly. Kegoyin Shekrein La'alf and Einin, La'einin Alfin, they're mixing the Alfs and the Eins together. We already had this earlier in Perek Ches regarding a Shliach Tzibur. We said at the time that in Ileg, someone who says an Ein is an Alf, an Alf is an Ein, any other letters, we don't make him a Shliach Tzibur, so we're bringing that back over here. And then here adds another example. Oy l'shiboilas, siboilas. So they can't pronounce the sh sound, they say s, and the specific example is shiboilas, siboilas. And anything like that. Ein noisinas kapayan, so they cannot do nesias kapayim, Birkas Kohanim. Chen kivdei peh v'chivdei loshin, and just people generally, even if it's not necessarily a particular letter, but just generally they're not speaking clearly. Maybe they stammer, something like that. They're not articulating the words properly. People don't understand what they're saying. They should not do nesias kapayim either. Now the Rambam, as I said, added shiboilas, siboilas. Shiboilas, siboilas is relatively famously from a story in Sefer Shoftim, where Yiftach went to fight with Ammon, and then he had some kind of feud with Shevet Ephraim. Shevet Ephraim said, "Why weren't we invited? Why weren't we a part of this?" And he said, "Well, you actually didn't join me when I wanted." Somehow it got violent, and Yiftach and his men were going after the people of Ephraim. And it says that how were they able to determine who's from Shevet Ephraim or not? There were Plitei Ephraim. There were people escapees. They were trying to escape. They were trying to pretend they weren't from Shevet Ephraim. So the people of Gilad, Yiftach's people, would say, "Are you Frosty? Are you from Shevet Ephraim?" And they'd say, "No, I'm not from Shevet Ephraim." So they say, "Oh yeah, so say Amar no Shiboilas." Say the word Shiboilas. And people from Shevet Ephraim would say Siboilas. That's what it says in the pasuk. Vayemer Siboilas. Couldn't say the shin, and they'd slaughter him. And they killed 42,000 people. So that's the story. So that's the origin of Shiboilas. Interestingly, even in the,
what does it mean?
It's a stalk of grain. Shiboilas. Actually, in English, there's a word, a shibboleth. Shibboleth comes from this source. It means something external that sort of defines a particular group. Just like in that story, Siboilas was something external that defined Shevet Ephraim. If you look in the Kesef Mishnah says it's Gemara and Megillah. It says there, Amarav Chaifani u'Baishani, meaning people from Haifa and people from Bet She'an. They had the Aleph and the Ayin problem. So at that time, everyone distinguished between the Aleph and the Ayin except those people. So they should not do Nesias Kapayim. And Rambam is the one who's adding these additional examples, like Shiboilas, Siboilas says for Sefer Rabbeinu Shehu Adin. The Rambam must have extrapolated that any equivalent speech defect. If looking out to Rabbi Shulchan Aruch and Siman Kuf Chav Ches, which I quoted from a lot yesterday, it's a very long Siman, it's 60 if a minute. I'm not going to quote all 60, don't worry. So Alter Rebbe says there, the Aleph and Ayins, says even though there is no Ayin in Birkas Kohanim, if you look at all people's Sukkim, there's no Ayin. So what's the problem? You're mispronouncing the Ayin, there's no Ayin. What's the problem? He says, no. If you always mispronounce the ayin, then when you say Yar Hashem Panav Elecha, maybe you're saying Yar with an ayin. Aleph and ayin are equal. So even when you're saying it right, we think maybe you're actually saying the wrong thing, and you're saying the wrong thing the wrong way.
Yeah, by sound,
it sounds right. What's the problem?
That's the idea that because everything's interchangeable, so your brain already is used to when he says even the right word, you think maybe he means the other word, the wrong word.
But Sfardi, it's different.
You're saying that also the sound of that's pronounced sin instead of. What do you mean?
No, the Sfardim mix up aleph and ayin. They're pronounced.
They distinguish. Yeah, sure. So that's what that's the first opinion the Alter Rebbe brings. And then he says, Shiboyla. He gives another example, the ches and the haze, people that can't pronounce a ches. It says, Elam Kain, I don't know if the Rambam mentions it here, Gabi this din, but the Alter Rebbe says also this is the kind of thing where we're going to see for other halachas, if Kol B'nai Ira, if everyone in the city speaks that way, here the Alter Rebbe brings in these countries, Shurubim Kekulam, don't distinguish between an aleph and an ayin. And I mentioned this when we learned Perek. I mentioned that obviously that doesn't affect the Shliach Tzibur. We don't, that's not how we speak. So that's not a psal. But this approach seems to think that there's something inherently wrong with you're mispronouncing the words. Elamai, if everyone mispronounces it together, then okay, everyone's mispronounced. So it sort of acquires a certain correctness, at least for this. And it says, V'yesh Misha Omer, the source seems to be the Taz, that even if
everybody.
Even if it's not it's kol b'nei ira, it's certain portions. It says, and it explains in parentheses, the psul is not because you're saying the wrong word. It's not like if you say the wrong letter the wrong way, so you're essentially misreading, you're mispronouncing. No, it's just a problem hesach hadas. If you mispronounce things, everyone knows what you really meant. You said what you intended to say. This is very distracting for everybody around you. Why is he saying it that way? So if it's a place where everyone's used to this shinoi, so then it's not a problem. It's not a hesach hadas. So it says even if everyone reads aleph and ayin correctly, if someone's mispronouncing it, he says, "Oh, there's no ayin in Birkas Kohanim." Right? We said there's no ayin, so there's no ayin in Birkas Kohanim. So if this guy's one problem is, the aleph he gets right. Aleph, we all say the aleph the same way. He doesn't get the ayin right, and everyone, it's a Sephardi place. Everyone says the ayin, but there's no ayin in Birkas Kohanim. So according to this approach, it wouldn't be a problem because as long as he's not distracting anyone. But he says the ikr is like this first svara, that the psul is that you're actually changing the words, and if in this city everyone pronounces an ayin a certain way, then when you're saying ya'er, we don't know what you're saying. It could be you're saying the wrong word, and the heter is only where it's mamish, where everyone reads like that.
Yeah, everyone gets up.
Yeah, a lot of these halachas we're going to see doesn't seem to be widely enforced in a particular consistent kind of way. Halacha beis. Halacha beis. Amumen ketzad. What about the mumen? So the Rambam says, "Kohen sheish b'mumen b'yadav or b'fanav or b'raglav." So if he has some kind of a problem with his hands, his face, his feet, Kohen shoyu atzbeis of akumis ayakushos, his fingers are bent or just twisted. Shoyu yadav b'hakonius, there are white spots on his hands. L'yisa is kapaf, so he can't lift it, he can't raise his hands. V'sham estaklim by, because people are looking at his hands. Misha Yarira Yarid al Skenim Bashashum Adar, someone who drools while he speaks, someone who's blind, even one eye, Layusas Kapov should also not, because his face is distracting. It doesn't give examples for feet, but feet as well. And here the Rambam mentions that if he's already familiar to his townspeople, so everyone's he's one eye so and so, or he drools. So mutter, then it's okay. People aren't looking at it.
They go up, they put their backs, they turn their backs. By the time they turn around, they're covered.
So we discussed the talis, and the assumption that here in the Rambam is that there's no talis involved. Just like in Eretz Yisrael, people don't cover. Most people. So we discussed. I'm going to quote from Alter Rebbe in a moment how the talis impacts this halacha. It might impact this halacha, but for the purposes of the Rambam, never mention anything about covering anything. So nothing's covered. So it's very distracting. I think here in Chutz La'aretz, I think everyone covers. It's Yisrael where they do the original minhag, they do it every day, so that comes along with not covering up each time. Someone whose hands are stained with these dyes. So istis it's a Greek word. Even in English nowadays, the plant from which this dye has come from is called isatis or something like that. And pua is a plant called rubia in English. So they're dye, plant-based dyes. Loisa is kapov.
It says purple and scarlet.
Right, okay. Those are the colors. Those are the actual colors that those dyes create. So your hands are deeply stained, that's another. Even though it's not a mum, technically the hands are healthy, but since they look distracting, so can't do it either. If that's a whole city that's built around the economy, is built around the dyes, so mutter b'shem is not going to be again. It's not distracting. So already, many mentioned the Yesser just mentioned that Alter Rebbe has this whole discussion about the talis. So after the Alter Rebbe brings this din, the Alter Rebbe adds that if the minhag hamakom is that the Kohanim cover their faces with the talis, before he gets to everyone else covering, if the Kohanim cover their face with the talis, he's talking about the mum on the face. Even if he has a number of mumim on his face, not a problem, no hesach hadas, because his face is covered. But if there's no such minhag, and he says, you know what, there's no minhag, but I'll cover my face with a talis so you won't see my face. He says, no, that's a problem. Because now it's meshuna, now it's strange. Why does he have a talis on his face? So everyone's going to look at that. And what if all the Kohanim, out of solidarity, say, okay, we're all going to cover our faces, so it's not going to be sticking, it's not going to be standing out. No, because people in the city are not used to this. So when everyone's going to do it, they're going to know it's because of the moment. They're going to still be staring. It's just it's a scene. It's something's going on. It says if the minhag hamakom is one of the minhagim mentioned yesterday is either the Kohanim are covering their hands in the talis or their hands are outside the talis. So if their hands are also inside the talis, so then the mum on the hands wouldn't be a problem. But yesh mi she'omer that if the minhag hakol, if everyone is covering their face with the talis, so then his hands, his face, and especially if the minhag is that they kind of have their hands outside the talis because everyone's covering their face. So then Yisakap, then Alter Rebbe ends off though ve'ein noyeg in kain. Interestingly, Alter Rebbe says ein noyeg in kain. Although I think nowadays again, I've never heard of any kain, with any deform. I never noticed or heard that anyone's avoiding Birkas Kohanim. It's just not. Maybe we have greater awareness about disabilities, so we're not staring as much. I don't know. And regarding the mum themselves, Alter Rebbe adds a number of additional details. So, for example, the Rambam only mentioned spots on the hands. The Rambam only mentioned on the hands. Alter Rebbe adds the face has a spot or his face is crooked. It doesn't really matter. These are just examples. Also, mum on the feet. The Alter Rebbe says it's only if we said yesterday that the takana of Rabbi Yechon and Zaka is to not wear the shoes. But we mentioned you can wear socks. So the Alter Rebbe says if they don't wear socks, so then the feet would be a problem. If it's a place where people wear socks, you're not taking your socks off. So also not a problem. And Alter Rebbe adds a woman shabaseser, internal or hidden, other parts of the body that are not external, that aren't visible. That's not a problem. Even though we're going to see, I think even later in the Rambam, there is a certain equation between Birkas Kohanim and Avodah. Kohanim do Avodah, Kohanim do Birkas Kohanim. If you have a mum, any mum, you can't do the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. The Hekesh doesn't go that far. Just for the standing, for certain things, not to go all the way to say any mum. Also, when it comes to Alter Rebbe adds, besides the drooling, if a person's eyes are constantly tearing, it's just tears nonstop, things like that. And then talks about, of course, if everyone's familiar with it, then it's not a problem. How do we know, though? What's dash? How do we know when someone's been in the city? So Alter Rebbe gets into the definition. He says, if you've been in the city for 30 days with this mum, people have seen you around for 30 days looking like this, it's already dash be'irei. But it has to be a place where you actually live or you came to live, and even if it's not permanently, but you came to be a malamed for a zman or some other temporary job, half a year. So after 30 days, dash be'ira, people have been interacting with you. You've joined the interactions in the city, so everyone's already accustomed. But if it's both temporary and he doesn't have any particular reason to stay there, so even after 30 days, could be no one got to know him, so it's still distracting. Halacha Gimel, Aveira Ketzad. What kind of Aveira?
Only one eye.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'm not sure if it's someone who's both. Would that be even more distracting, or the one is just?
It's not the one eye. It's possible either way.
Mm-hmm.
If it's two eyes.
So I'm not sure. I didn't have a chance to. I just sort of assumed that would probably also be if he looks.
You can't see.
But on the other hand, maybe one eye looking different than the other eye is more distracting compared to two eyes. You have to double check. Halacha Gimel, the Aveira, okay, it's the Kohen Shraga Sanafesh. So the Aveira we're talking about specifically is murder. The Kohen murdered, I feel bishkag even accidentally, Av Bishas at Tshuva, even with Tshuva, Lo Yisas Kapov, cannot do Nesis Kam Shenamar, Yedechem Dama Malay, you have this passage in Yeshaya describing the hands are filled with blood, so the murder is attributed to the hands. So these are murderous hands. And in that context, Hashem says, when you raise your hands, I'm going to ignore it. So you're out of the running. The Kohen Shavar Avodah Zara, if it was idolatrous, even if it was under duress, even if it was an accident. Av bishal tshuva, the Rambam is very strict about this. And it says, "Kap of lo'ilam," that's it. He's banned. Shenamar, disqualified. Shenamar layalu koyanei habamais. That's regarding avoida, that someone who served avodah zara can't be a kohen. Ubracha kavod, and here we are seeing the hakesh between avoida and the birkas kohenim. Shenamar l'sharsai ulavarech b'shmai, so the two go together. So a Meshumed, even if he obviously came to his doing Birkas Kohanim, he abandoned that path. And also permanently disqualified. Anything else, not a problem. So the Kesef Mishnah comments on the Avodah Zarah, the sources in the Gemara Menachos regarding the Kohanim that were in Beis Chonyo. So this is a very interesting phenomenon in the time of Bayesheni, that there was a Kohen Gadol, someone from the family of Kohanim, who, for internal politics, he escaped to Mitzrayim, and he decided, you know what, I still want to be a Kohen Gadol. He built a Beis HaMikdash in Egypt, Mikdash Chonyo, in Heliopolis. Yeah, it's brought down in the Gemara. And you have Mishnayos and Gemara talking about, like, what's the status of this Beis HaMikdash, what's the status of the Kohanim that do things there. Very interesting topic. So in Gemara Menachos it says, Kohanim that were in Beis Chonyo lo yisham sheva mikdash. They're disqualified now from the Beis HaMikdash. Ve'en tzorach leimar davar acher. And Rashi says, what's in tzorach leimar davar acher? In tzorach leimar, you don't have to, it goes without saying that if they served real avodah zarah, then for sure they can't be. But the source is actually Chonyo. And then which is a whole topic for itself. Just mentioning that in passing because it's interesting. The Kesef Mishnah also adds he's not sure. He says bein ba'enas, bein. Where Beis Chonyo, they weren't anusim. So where did the Rambam get? If the source is Beis Chonyo, where did the Rambam get this idea that even anusim would be disqualified? Okay. Look on the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch on this topic. Alter Rebbe says, Kohen who murdered even accidentally. This idea of afilu asat tshuva, right? The Eish Oimnim Shem asat tshuva neisei kavav. Here the Alter Rebbe brings a different opinion that if he did tshuva even after committing murder, then he could, and it was only prohibited, only prevented if he's actually still standing by what he did. We don't want to lock Bali Tshuva out. Who knows, what someone might have done in his past. And that's the minhag. The Alter Rebbe is clear that the minhag is to overlook, to look past. And the Alter Rebbe says, what if it's just a rumor? There's a rumor, there's buzz. Everyone's saying this guy is a murderer. He committed a murder, and there's no indication that he's showing any regret regarding this alleged murder. Because it was never fully established, he can still do Nesias Kapayim. Now, there was another interesting example. What if a moil did a bris milah and the child died? Some kind of reckless, kind of bris milah. So first of all, he can do Birkas Kohanim because maybe the child, like Chol Chadashav, maybe he was never going to live anyway. So did he really murder a child that was going to live? And even if we knew for a fact that it was healthy, since he meant to skaven the mitzvah, he had good intentions, he was trying to do a mitzvah, so we don't disqualify him.
So, by the Kohen, if he does accidental manslaughter, he has to go to the Orei Mikla.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So then, and when the Kohen Gadol dies, he goes free. Mm-hmm. So then over there, he would be liable to do the avodah?
No relation to him, saying no parallel here.
No, but I'm saying the accidental stays with him forever.
Yeah, according to the Rambam, for the purpose of this
law. It should be any different if you're going to say that it was also accidental manslaughter.
Right.
He wasn't miskaven.
Given sheneskaven lemitzvah, so usually when you say an accident, it means the guy was driving a car and he crashed into someone. He wasn't here. He was mamish doing a mitzvah, and the mitzvah a bit different. Also, it says if someone pushed a pregnant woman and she had a miscarriage, for this purpose, ha'hoidegas uber pater, of course, it's a controversial topic. Jews versus if it's a Jewish uber or not a Jewish uber, but for the purpose of this halacha, it's not considered murder, even if the child was carried to term, even if it was a healthy fetus, is not a murderer. Then the Alter Rebbe talks about what about the
does that connect with abortion at all?
To some extent, yeah, definitely ties into that hot button topic. Yeah, maybe when that's the focus of the Rambam, we'll get to talk about it. So the Kohen who converted, even the Alter Rebbe says, even filo dasi yishmaelim she'enam avdim avodah zarah, even if it's the Islam, the Rambam just said nishtam avodah zarah. The Alter Rebbe says even if it's the Islam, so it's like a knas. That it's like he's almost like a chalal. He lost his kahuna, and the Alter Rebbe, and he doesn't get the first aliyah at all. It's like one big package deal. That's if he didn't do tshuva. But if he did tshuva, even if it was avodah zarah, according to the Alter Rebbe, he gets to do tshuva. And all the other variations, like the Rambam said, not a problem. So even Gilei Arayos, even if he's a serial, doing I don't know what, doesn't take away his Nesias Kapayim rights, even if he never shows any regret. He says even an oral, someone who never did a bris milah can do Nesias Kapayim, even it's bemazed. Even though an oral couldn't do avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, but for Nesias Kapayim, not a problem. Then the Alter Rebbe was going to talk about shikar and all that. Okay, let's continue. The Ram Halacha Dalad Hashanim Keitzad. What about age? Kayin Nar Le'Yisas Kavav Achi Yismalis Kanei. So he says a child shouldn't, even a young boy should not, even if he's bar mitzvah, should not do Nesias Kapayim until his beard fills in. Looking at Alter Rebbe says it a bit differently. Alter Rebbe says that a child who's 13 but doesn't have Beis Saris, it didn't actually reach puberty, so then he shouldn't be the only one doing Nesias Kapayim. It's not covered at Tzibur that we're all getting a bracha from this whippersnapper. But if there are other Kohanim that are Gedolim, even if he's not an adult, even if he's a child, chinuch, why not? He joins. That's what we do. And he can even make a bracha because that's part of chinuch. You make the bracha as well. Once he reaches puberty, according to the other Beis Cyrus, so then he could even be the only Kohen, different than what the Rambam says, but cry. But what? Right. So that's not that comes a bit later. According to the Alter Rebbe, he could even on his own, but only cry, only incidentally, not permanently, until his beard grows in. Covered at Tzibur, it's not they're covered that permanently. The Kohen is always giving a bracha. He doesn't have a beard. And once you reach 20, which is that's the age when your beard should fill in. Once you reach that age, even if the beard didn't fill in, dinoi kinnis male. The point is more the age actually. So as long as he's an adult, it's fine. And then the Alter Rebbe says, what's a cry and what's kava, what's permanent and what's incidental. If you do Nesias Kapayim every day, then kava is to do it every day. But in these countries where we're not doing Nesias Kapayim every day anyway, only on Yom Tov, so it's always about cry. So no problem. You can always have a child. You can always have a mitzvah boy be the only one. It's not a problem because our whole Birkas Kohanim is very irregular. Next part of Halacha Dal, Vayayin Keitzah. What's the story with the wine? Misha Shasur Revius Yayin Chayav Asachas. He drank unadulterated wine, just pure, which wasn't the practice at the time. So we can't until the wine wears off. So for this purpose, we are comparing it to the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. What if it wasn't in one gulp, it was in two sips? Or that Revius had some water mixed in, mutter, then it's okay. That's all if it's literally Revius. What if it's a bit more? Even if it had the water, even if it was not in one shot, so then again you have to wait till the wine wears off. And the Ram takes the opportunity here to say what he says is the share of the Revius. Two by 2 fingers, with the height of 2 fingers and a half a finger and a fifth of a finger. Maybe this is not the time to focus on the topic of Shir Revius. I'm just reading it. Maybe some other time that will be the focus. And we say a finger, and we mean the thumb.
2 fingers like this, or 2 fingers.
No, this is the length, the width, and the height. It's the thumb. What we call the thumb. We already mentioned actually yesterday this din about shikar, because we said why don't according to the Rambam, according to those who didn't see Kapayim every tefillah, why is there no Nesias Kapayim mincha? Because at mincha everyone ate and maybe they drank wine, and shikar also, that's why there's no that's that halach was already mentioned then. The Alter Rebbe gets into this whole thing about how Birkas Kohanim is compared in some ways to avoid in the Beis HaMikdash. And in some ways, it's compared to a Nazir, because in the Parshas Nasai, the Parsha of Nazir and the Parsha of Birkas Kohanim, Nasai Ba'aleischa, they're close to each other. So the Alter Rebbe says, you get the kula of Nazir and the kula of Bisharas HaMikdash. You get the easy side of both. So for example, a Nazir is supposed to be he's being very careful, he's particularly not drinking wine, but the Nazir can actually drink any other kind of alcohol. No limits on what a Nazir can drink. So he says, for the purpose of this halacha, the Alter Rebbe says the same thing. It's only the yayin that's a problem for Birkas Kohanim. But if you drink any other alcohol, shouldn't be a problem. He says it's not like tefillah. With tefillah, we say any alcohol would be a problem because you're He says Nesias Kapayim. You're not talking to Hashem. You're talking to the people. Amar lahem. So knock yourself out. Drink as much whiskey as you want. You're not a Nazir over here. And You are a Nazir. You're not a Kayan.
So-
You're not a Kayan in the Beis Hamikdash. You're a Nazir, so you can drink whatever you want. As long as you're not Shikr Kaloit, then you're Pater from all mitzvahs. Then you're not doing a mitzvah.
Shisui Yayin, it was brought down in the Torah. It only goes on wine, not on.
No, in the Beis Hamikdash, yes. Beis Hamikdash, we're saying we get the Kula of Nazir and the Kula of the Beis Hamikdash. So a Nazir, the Kula of the Nazir is that he's only Asr in wine. He could drink any other alcohol, no problem. It's just the Chetzanim and the Zagim, just the wine, the grape byproducts, not any other alcohol. So we have the Kula for Birkas Kohanim, and you can drink any alcohol according to the Alter Rebbe and still do Birkas Kohanim. It's not a problem.
So why do we have the whole thing of doing Musa first?
Oh, well, I'm going to mention that at the end. Then he says, what's the Kula of the Vaid in the Beis Hamikdash? He says, a Nazir can't drink even a mashu of wine. In the Beis Hamikdash, the whole shir is revius. That's where this whole shir revius came from, because we're comparing it to the Beis Hamikdash. So that's interesting. You get that and that. Then it says, V'yesh Eisrim, that a shikr should not be doing Nesias Kapayim, even if he drank other alcoholic beverages, or even Eichlim HaMashakrim, even if it's some kind of food that causes some kind of delirium, maybe other substances. So Chatchila, you shouldn't be drinking any alcohol before Nesias Kapayim. So I was going to mention that, as we know, the minhag is Simchas Torah. We're particular to do it earlier. Clearly, that's taken into account. We're not,
That's mitzvah minhag, it's not mitzvah halacha.
the Alter Rebbe doesn't mention it, not over here at least. No. Halacha, hey, Tumas HaYadayim Ketzad. What about the hands? Kohen Shlenato Yadav, the Yisa Eskapov. So a Kohen who didn't wash his hands should not be doing Nesias Kapayim.
That thing about doing Birkas Kohanim and Simchas Torah is an old minhag. It's not, and that's not like it just started. It was in the time of Gemara, right?
Shachris, there was no Simchas Torah in the time of the Gemara. So first to find out what the origin of Simchas Torah is, and then I didn't have a chance to see when that minhag started. I would assume somewhere in the last 200-300 years. I would imagine.
Really?
I would imagine. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Mario mentions. I didn't have a chance to look.
Because I thought that was the whole source. That how do we know that we drink on Simchas Torah because of that halacha? Okay, fine.
I'll look into it. Tumas Hayadayim Ketzad. So you have to. So occasionally, not yellow. Yisas kapov. If you didn't wash your hands, you can't do the bracha. The Perek, you have to wash till the wrist. Just like again the Beis Hamikdash parallel. You need to do Kiddush Yadayim. Thankfully, you don't have to wash your feet. And then you do the bracha. So the hands have to be kodesh, like the kiddush yadayim. And now Rambam takes the opportunity to mention over here of all places. If you're chol, you lost your kahuna, you're kain, but you're not kosher kain. Then also vishayin b'kihuna, he's not in the running over here. So a number of details about this in the Alter Rebbe as well, because we don't want to overdo it here. He talks about you're not making a bracha. Technically, we all washed the hands for shachar, so why are we washing our hands again? And should you make a bracha? Should you not make a bracha? Gets into all of that, and then he says it could be if you touch the makom etunov, maybe you should be making a bracha on atilas yadayim because you mamash have a bracha to wash your hands. What should we do? That's not the minhag. So therefore, if you're a kohen, you're a chared, you should make sure not to touch something that makes you mechuyev in atilas yadayim, because then there's a question, a shayla of whether this atilas yadayim is a mamash achiyav with a bracha. Maybe, perhaps, yeah. Then the Rambam didn't mention anything about the Leviim pouring water. That's all that Rambam had to say about it. So the Alter Rebbe brings that the minhag is the Levi pours the water. The Leviim are also involved. You love alacha, bishur sucha. So they should be involved somehow. So that's how the Leviim should wash their hands first. Because how are you going to be giving kedusha to the kohen if you're not? And he says in these countries though the Leviim rely on the netilas yadayim shachris. So the Kohanim are not, but the Leviim are. So according to the Alter Rebbe, the Leviim don't wash their hands first. I think in most shows the Leviim do. They don't. It's not common. Okay. And what if you don't have a Levi? Then a Bechor Peter Rechem. It has to be an actual halachic Bechor from his mother, not from his father, because Bechor from a father, we don't have that the Omol, the Bechor did the Avodah. That's not relevant here. Then the question of what if the Levi is a Talmid Chacham? Okay, we're not going to quote every single detail here. Halacha Vav. What if a Kohen didn't have any of the problems we listed, but he has lots of other problems? He's a very problematic guy. He's not a Talmid Chacham. He's not scholarly. He's not observant properly. Or there are rumors about him, about his behavior. Or he's not honest. He's not an honest guy. He can still step up. We don't stop him. We should zoom mitzvah. And every kohen who is worthy of this mitzvah, and we have a list of things that make him unworthy. He's not on the list. We don't tell a wicked person, be even more wicked and skip more mitzvahs. That's not for us to say.
This reminds me of a story. Once Kohanim mentioned this one Kohen refused to do Birkas Kohanim with all the rest of them. After they asked him, why aren't you? So he says, Kinelach, you want to eat? Gambit. You're not going to gambit, you're not going to have what to eat. You think I'm going to stand there with my hands.
Yeah. The altit of a toimar, you shouldn't
have a ganif and it can be bench.
Yeah. So don't and you're gonna wonder and say, not toil Birkas Hedges. What's a bracha from this guy worth? He's a mitzvah. Why do we want his bracha? Don't wonder that. She'en kibul bracha tali b'kohanim. It's not up to the kohanim. Ela b'kadosh baruch. It's up to Hashem. Shneim v'sam l'shmiya b'nei Yisrael. V'ani avarachem. Hashem is ultimately the one giving the bracha. HaKohanim is mitzvah. Well, the kohanim do their part. They do the mitzvah. V'kadosh baruch hu barachmav. V'varach es Yisrael k'cheftzei. But it's Hashem that's actually the one who's implementing the bracha. The Alter Rebbe also mentions this. He quotes all the other things that Rambam says. This line in Hashem does it. Even if we know that the rumor is true, and he's completely unrepentant, not a problem. That's already a nachrik l'chol davar. It's a different halacha.
Why don't we use a Kohanim mitzvah to override the Dvarim HaMeinoim? If it's ultimately it's Rebbe's brachas, so he's blind, so he's the.
But you still want somebody.
Clearly, there's a minimum respect you have to bring to the mitzvah, a minimum performance. You have to do it right, and those things it's just not being done right.
And a ganif is okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where we draw the line.
But all
right, now let's just finish off. Moving on to the other details. People that are standing behind the kohanim are not included. If you stand from the sides, they are included. Even if there's something interrupting, an iron curtain, an iron wall, as long as they're facing the kohanim, they're included in the bracha. Test. The kohanim you need 10, which I mentioned earlier as well, and the kohanim can be part of the minyan, which you mentioned I think earlier as well. Even if the whole shul are kohanim, they all step up and there's no one left to listen. So who are they blessing? There's no one there. There's no one in the audience. The brothers in the north, the brothers in the south, wherever. Who's going to say amen though? There's an esus nashim, so you see there's an esus nashim. This is an interesting thing. Rambam seems to be saying that if you have multiple kohanim, like 2 minyanim, so then you can actually, some of them go up and some of them don't, and the other 10 can answer amen, and it doesn't look problematic in terms of their yichus, because 10 of them are not going up. You got the picture. It's not something to do with them. What if only the chazan's a kohen? We should not. This is the mission in brachas. I believe him. After chas, you should know the problem simply being that he'll get confused. But if he knows for sure that he won't get confused, he'll get back on track. Of course, it's all about peh. Then he's okay. And then kohen klal. And here the Rambam finally mentions that if you don't have a kohen, she'agil sh'tachtzib l'sim shalom, the kohen k'avesinu b'chenu brachos shlosh b'teira amul la'an l'van kohen am kadei shachar kamer v'rach Hashem yishmerecha yar Hashem yisa Hashem v'samu shmi v'einu am amen. We don't say v'samu shmi. V'einu am amen u'maschu v'emer sim shalom. We do say amen, which this whole topic whether I think other people say ken yiratzin. We say amen. But we of course say it every tefillah that the kohanim aren't doing their mitzvah, which we discussed yesterday. If you already did the mitzvah and you come to a new shul and there's a tzibur and they didn't reach Birkas Kohanim yet, and they say he can join and do it again. According to Rambam, you can do it multiple times in a day. Continuation of Allah Yiralf. If you didn't step away from the place when the Shliach Tzibur started saying the bracha, but say now he can't go up anymore. He missed his chance. If he moved his feet, even if he didn't reach the duchen in time after the bracha, he can still go. As long as you have that kiras raglav. Base final halacha of Hilchos tefillah. If you don't, just for no reason, don't go up. even though it's technically one mitzvah, as we know, it's one mitzvah on the list. It's as if he transgressed three. These are three statements which are sort of exhorting the Kohanim to go ahead and do it. So he was mevatel those three statements. So it's like three mitzvahs. The Kohen doesn't bless, he isn't blessed. And if you do bless, you are blessed.
Okay.